Hi everyone, my name's Hi everyone, my name's Sasha. I'm a product designer on the UX Papercuts team, and today I want to share my personal UX Papercuts year in review. Spoiler alert, it's a bit early for an end of 2023 edition because it's end of November and the team is not even 1 year old, but I wanted to take the opportunity to share some things. So let's start with some facts and figures, shall we? So as I mentioned, the team is not even 1 year old. So we started out in February. That was like the initial start of the UX Papercuts team. And we consisted of Annabelle and myself reporting directly to Valerie. And then, like later in the year, we added these lovely two faces to the team, which were really great additions. Like Julie and Chad joined later in the year, which was great. And together we were able to merge over 540 merge requests until now, which is quite a big number if you ask me for such a small team. And today I want to highlight some of the things, some of my personal highlights of the year. And as you know, we as a team, we love to work beyond regular paper cuts. So we take on bigger initiatives across the board. And I just want to share some of the highlights of things we worked on. So I categorize them by milestones. So it's easier maybe to, to have a look at where actually those changes came in. So we start with 15.11, where we worked on, or like our theme was merge request UI. We're able to ship 64 merge requests in that first. That was the first themed, milestone. We had one before. So we improved all the lists where we moved things around. So there was like a cleanup. We moved labels. We moved other things around. We streamlined a lot of the lists. So we started with the merge request list, and then we saw, okay, when we do these changes, we have to do them in other places as well to keep it consistent. So this was a bigger effort to do. And then we introduced very small things, like we introduced the fork icon in a merge request, where we can actually see that it's a fork by an icon. And this is something which is really cool because I also sometimes work in other open source communities like the Drupal community or the Linux community, and people really had like good feedback about that they can actually see if the source is now a fork, because they now have an easy way to see if the source is a fork. So that was a great little change we did. And then we just tidied up a lot of things like these merge request related tables, where we just made sure that everything is a bit more tidied up than before. So these were all like smaller changes. Then we also took on some bigger things. So we streamlined the widget appearance. We saw that we have some related widgets, like related branches, which do not really follow like the design language of like other widgets. So this was an effort where we tried to streamline the widgets appearance like across the whole product. So we started with merge request widgets, and then we went on to epics and issuables as a whole and other places. In 16.0, the theme was labels and lists, and we're able to ship 68 merge requests. One of the big things which was beyond regular paper cuts was like we tried to fix the contrast of label presets. And here's a big catch, right? Because like for AA and AAA, the measurements to calculate contrast is by using just calculation, right? But the actual perceptual contrast we as humans perceive is not calculated by any numbers, because it can be different, right? So if you have like black text on orange background, for example, it's harder to read than white text on orange background, even if the contrast is higher. So we switched like all the methods we use in our product for the labels to the APCA method, which will be the new standard for WCAG 3.0. So this is still a working draft, but it works pretty fine. So this was like a huge undertaking to update the whole code baseline for all those things. And then maybe one of my all-time favorites was like adding like the improved label selection to issuables. So before, when you created like an issue, for example, you would choose like a bunch of labels, and we at GitLab are experts in like in selecting labels for everything we do. There wasn't an easy way to actually see which labels you did choose upfront. So you had to create like an issue, and then you would go normally to the sidebar to maybe deselect something you accidentally selected. And now you have the ability to see actually what you selected before you finally click on this create issue button. Then something really small, like a small paper cut. When you create like a group label, for example, you have like a pre-selection of colors. If you want to go beyond these colors, you would need to know the hex value, right? Which regular users don't know. So I added this small color picker that it's way easier to like select your own color. Very small effort, not so obvious at first, but very helpful. Then in 16.1, we switched like our milestone to AI experiments. We were able to ship like 45 merge requests, and we based our work around GitLab Duo, like our chat interface, where we added like micro interactions, because like the components we had from GitLab UI would maybe not be the most suitable ones for this interactive experience. So we created some new components and updated them. We also worked on the selection of code so that you could select multiple lines of code, and then like GitLab Duo would show you suggestions around like the code improvements. Then in 16.2, we started with the settings UI. This was a huge effort, so it spanned over multiple milestones. So 16.2 and 16.3 was mainly based on settings UI. We were able to ship 147 merge requests, which is quite a number. So some of my highlights were the sticky section for headers and footers. So if you have like a settings page which has like different sections, now this is an optional option, so you can make them sticky, that you actually see which settings relate to which section title. And also like in this example here, the update profile settings button is sticky, so you don't have to scroll to the end to save your form, right? And then the biggest effort we did so far this year was like the migration of settings pages in terms of add forms. So we have a lot of settings pages which actually sneak like add forms within settings. So you have some settings on top, and then you have a form, and then you have more settings. And users actually did not see where a form would start and end, to add content. And in this particular example, we have like personal access tokens, so you can add tokens, you can manage them, you can edit them, you can delete them. So we actually introduced like a pattern for settings where we would use them like across the board over all settings. And these are like application level settings, group level settings, project level settings, user settings, like everywhere where we have like these kind of patterns, we actually updated them. So this was like a really big effort. In 16.4, we moved on to pipelines and jobs, 51 merge requests in this milestone. This is still behind the feature flag, so this was also like a bigger effort. We updated the pipeline graph page, like refreshed the design. Currently, it's just rolled out for GitLab as a project. So we're still like experimenting a bit with updating this, and once we feel it's ready, we can maybe ship it. Of course, this also meant that we have to update the dependencies page as well to use like the same design language. And the biggest improvement actually is for mobile. This is where my idea of updating this page originated originally, because when you're using like this page on a mobile, you have like this horizontal navigation, and like if you look at the pipeline, it's an endless horizontal list. which might not be the best user experience for mobile users. And now we switched it that you have actually like a user flow where you can actually see all the pipelines at a glance, and you can just normally scroll down. So that was a huge mobile improvement. Then we also updated the job page because, just with like the updated design language when it comes to the sidebar and the header with like, like a sticky job title and so on. So this was just like streamlining to the recent changes we did to issues and merge requests and other pages. We also updated the icons from outline icons to, like this filled icons. This looks like a very small change, but there was like a really big change under the hood because we had to update the whole code base. So we had a lot of components needed to be refactored to actually achieve this. And the goal here was also with dark mode in mind, because before with the outline icons, we had a lot of issues when you use it in dark mode, and now with the new fill icons, like it's way easier to perceive like the different states we have. Then in 16.5, we squeezed in like we called it a cleanup milestone. So this was basically just a milestone for all the bigger efforts we had from the previous milestones, that we have a chance to actually finish them and, like dragging them over the finish line, because we had a pile of open initiatives on our end. So we wanted to just, like clean up like the backlog. So 58 merge requests were done in this milestone. And in addition to, because the like the theme was cleanup, we also shipped some other improvements like the performance bar, like a visual update, where I just spent like less than an hour to visually update this thing, that it looks a bit more modern than before. The functionality would still remain the same. In 16.6, so the previous milestone, we worked on activity, where we were able to merge 46 merge requests. And some of the highlights, this is a preview because it's not live yet. We haven't deployed this yet. And it was due to be deployed today, but we had some technical issues, so it wasn't ready in time. But this is like the profile page, how it looks today, and it didn't have like a lot of updates. So we rearranged the content just a bit, that it looks a bit more modern. So this is like how the new profile page potentially could look like, or this is like the current draft we're at. So yeah, this is something you can expect like in the next couple of days or weeks to arrive. And then for the current milestone, which is 16.7, I think it's a lot. I had a lot of slides for a tiny amount of time. Is we have the theme of the project page. So Michael did some upfront designs of, his vision, how potentially this page could look like. So far, we were able to ship 36 merge requests. It's a bit lower than before because it's a really big effort. And what we're trying to do is basically, we're trying to update this page here from this to something which looks like this. And we, we split everything up into multiple components. So we do updates component by component. We have a lot of dependencies, a lot of technical changes because we migrate a lot of components from XAML to Vue. So yeah, there are like big efforts going on, and we will be able to ship something similar to this behind the feature flag soon. And because you all know that I'm a huge fan of unboxing things, of course, I also had some unboxing things in mind for this year. So I worked on unboxing comments, right? Because we have like these box comments, and I'm working on a draft where we partly unbox things, because we cannot fully do it because it would be really, like we need some structure in the comments, but I'm experimenting around like unboxing at least partially the comment section. So this is something I'm currently working on, besides all the work I regularly do with like fixing paper cuts. So yeah, fun stuff. So what's next for us, right? So 16.8 will be themed around accessibility. So this milestone, we will already do some test MRs for from the accessibility group. So the accessibility group did look at our product, like identifying a lot of different issues we have, and now trying to break them down into issues that we as a team can work on improving them in the next milestone, in the upcoming milestone. Another thing we want to do is mobile enhancements, because this is, I have a personal interest in this because I think we're lacking a bit behind in terms of mobile experience. So trying to enhance that. And we have like a lot more to be shared next year because we have a pretty cool roadmap of things we want to do for next year as well. So yeah, that's it. That was very fast. I know, sorry. But it's very late on my end, so I had to hurry up. Thank you.
That's awesome. Appreciate it. It's always nice to see all the things that you all are working on and the sheer amount of MRs. It's crazy, but impressive. Gina, you had the first question.
Yes. Yeah. Also, I agree with Justin. Just seeing all the improvements you've made so far is just insane and amazing. I was wondering though, how's your experience been when you're collaborating with design DRIs that are, responsible for the areas that you're updating? And if there's any learnings that you have, because I would be very interested in how for example, like I could improve if you're working on runner or stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it would be very interesting to actually hear from the DRIs how their experience is, for me as well personally. But we're usually trying to reach out whenever we do like bigger efforts. We try to reach out with like the changes we want to do, so that we can iterate on. So something we did for pipelines and chops in that milestone quite often, that we came up with ideas, with a proposal, and then like we pinged like the DRIs saying, okay, please provide us with feedback. Is this going into the right direction? Is this something we can do or not? Or for the current milestone with the project page, Michael actually reached out that he's working on updating, like the design for the project page, if this would be something we're interested in doing. So he was able to, like work on the designs beforehand, and now we're iterating together with him. Like we're updating parts whenever we see what actually can fit in a milestone. Might be not the final version you saw, but maybe like 80% there. So we're just, like trying to ping him on the metric, saying, okay, look, this is this part we're changing. Maybe it has these and these restrictions, or we leave these parts out because we need more time for them. So we're in constant exchange, or we're trying to be in constant exchange with DRIs. It's not always the case if we just do regular paper cuts when we're actually fixing UX problems. We might just CC you on something, or if it's small enough, you might not even see it on your end because we don't want to spam you. Because of, with these 540 merge requests, I don't think you all want to be pinged on all of them all the time. So yeah, I think it depends on the size and on the impact. But if you do like bigger efforts or larger initiatives like the ones I shared, we definitely reach out to DRIs to align with you guys. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And as for your question about, just speaking from my experience of working with you and Annabelle on the pipeline stuff, I thought the fact that you shared those ideas so early on and asked if you were going in the right direction was helpful for me. And I know it was helpful for the other, for Vitika and Sanjung also. So yeah, I think the collaboration that the whole paper cuts team is doing is good from my end, at least.
Cool.
Becca?
Yeah, we probably don't have time for both my questions, but I was wondering, you said you're going to work on accessibility coming up. Also, this is really, really exciting stuff. So thank you for all the work you did. And there's a lot there. But But I was wondering if you could talk about how you or the paper cuts team in general identifies accessibility challenges or possible improvements. This came up in a conversation with a fellow friend slash designer recently, and I've just been thinking more about it. And aside from like browser plugins to look at the product, you know, with different people with different vision conditions. It's something I want to learn more about. So if you could say something about that, that'd be interesting to me.
Yeah, so this is like a joint effort. As I mentioned, there's like the accessibility working group. So for this particular milestone, they actually do all the upfront work where they already identified like all the issues. So we basically get past like a a list of issues we can work on. But whenever I work on accessibility issues or trying to fix them, I use like like screen readers and other assistive tech I have, like browser plugins and so on, just to see how maybe other users would perceive like the experience. And then I will just like create MRs directly whenever I see a problem. Or as well, we have a huge backlog of accessibility issues as well, where we can like pull from. So yeah, it's a mixed bag, but for this milestone, it's very well prepared by the great folks who work on the accessibility task force. Is it called task force workforce? Jeremy should know.
It's a working group, and
Working group. Okay, yeah.
yeah, we also get feedback from customers. So this is a regulatory or compliance requirement for many, and so oftentimes they will run their own. So I don't know all of the techniques that they use, but then they will supply us a report, and then we create issues off of those reports.
I'm wondering if that accessibility working group has any videos, demos showing the product through those different lenses, just to help build empathy so that each designer and researcher doesn't have to get all these browser plugins themselves. But is there some kind of like accessibility demo that's out there that anyone knows of?
No, I would recommend jumping in on the accessibility Slack channel. The working group right now is focused on creating code coverage for accessibility. And so that's where that effort is. I'm actively working with a few vendors to see what we might be able to pull together for some GitLab specific training and continue to work through that. Actually got another resource this morning on that. So, and then I linked in the chat to where we're just some evaluation content. I would also take a look at, I can link it up here in a second, but the navigation accessibility piece. We had a large effort to address, to evaluate the accessibility of the new navigation. And as part of that, we had some pretty robust outlines of requirements and what we're looking for, how we're conducting the evaluations. And then for several of those, we recorded the findings, what that looked like to go through screen readers, et cetera. I plan on doing a showcase on that in the future, but I would reference something like that too. So a couple different paths to take.
Awesome.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like the best way is to get some of those tools that people use to fill accessibility needs. That's usually your best way to replicate what users are having to deal with. The boring solution is read documentation from like a CAG around 2.1 or what we're expected to meet, and then look at your area of the product and try and see like if there are any gaps there. There may be some things you could do inside GitLab to try and help replicate these things. Like you could change your language in GitLab to, let's say, French or German, and you could look for text that's truncating in places that you don't expect, because we don't often test our designs with multiple languages. So there are a bunch of little things, but accessibility is so broad that it's hard to say like there's a Swiss Army knife to fit it all. We do have access or once we have like a few seats for dev tools, but even that doesn't capture everything. It captures some stuff, but like there's some cases where you still have to assess like the visual contrast of things, depending on how colors play or how the CSS uses different properties, that you can't just catch it easily. So yeah, lots to read out there, lots to simulate. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of opportunity for us to look for more places to change.
Awesome.
Yeah,
And
also
then
like macOS has like a built-in screen reader, for example, which is very easy to, you just have to activate it and then you can start using it. So no installation. It's not the best out there, but it does its job, maybe to start with, when you want to, give it a try. So yeah, lots of browser extensions you can use. I can maybe, like tomorrow morning create a list with some of the things, so you have like a starting point. Some easy things to start with.
Awesome. Well, great
One
conversation.
tricky thing to call. Oh,
Sorry, we're at time. I don't want to hold everybody. Always an opportunity to bring this over into UX Weekly too. We can always talk more about any of these topics there, so feel free to move stuff over. With that, thank you all. Hope you have a good rest of your day.